Dirty cop harassed black woman at traffic stop. Her husband, the police chief, was in the car. She worked as a community outreach coordinator at a local nonprofit, a job she loved because it allowed her to help people and make a difference. Her workdays were long, often filled with meetings, phone calls, and visits to different parts of the city. Today had been especially tiring. She had spent hours attending a meeting about neighborhood safety programs, and now she was ready to go home, hoping for a quiet evening. Her husband, David Johnson, was in the passenger seat, reviewing some paperwork for the police department. David had been the city's police chief for several years, a position he had earned through dedication, experience, and integrity. Despite his busy schedule, he always made time to support Monica. Tonight he was quiet, tired from a long day of meetings and briefings, but he had insisted on riding home with her, simply to spend a few minutes together. The streets were calm as Monica drove. The evening sun had just disappeared behind the buildings, leaving a soft orange glow in the sky. Streetlights flickered on one by one, casting long shadows on the pavement. Monica's car was tidy and well-maintained, a reflection of her organized personality. She had always been careful when driving, making sure to follow all rules of the road. Suddenly, she noticed the flashing lights behind her. A police car had pulled over behind them, its lights reflecting on the windows of surrounding buildings. Monica's stomach sank slightly, not because she had done anything wrong, but because there was always an unease when stopped by a police officer, no matter how careful one tried to be. She gently slowed the car to the side of the road, keeping her hands on the steering wheel, and waited for the officer to approach. The officer who came to the window was tall, with a stern expression and a sharp voice. Monica had never met him before, but she had heard of him in passing from other residents in the area. He had a reputation for being tough, sometimes too tough. As he approached the car, Monica felt a small wave of anxiety, even though she knew she had done nothing wrong. "Good evening, ma'am. License and registration, please," the officer said, his tone slightly harsher than necessary. Monica handed him her documents calmly, keeping her voice steady. "Good evening, officer." "Here you go." She handed him her license and registration with a polite smile, hoping the situation would remain simple and professional. The officer glanced at the documents, then back at Monica, his expression unreadable. He took his time, studying her carefully, as if trying to find a reason to make trouble. Monica felt a pang of frustration. She had always believed in respecting law enforcement, but there was something about the way this officer looked at her that felt personal. David, sitting beside her, noticed the officer's behavior immediately. He had seen all kinds of police interactions over the years, both good and bad, but something about this one felt wrong. He stayed calm, though, watching the exchange quietly. He knew that any sudden reaction could make the situation worse. His hand rested lightly on his lap, not on the door or the dashboard, keeping a non-threatening posture while remaining ready to intervene if necessary. The officer cleared his throat and leaned slightly closer to the window. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" he asked, though it was clear he didn't intend to wait for a proper answer. His eyes scanned the car, lingering in a way that made Monica uncomfortable. "No, officer," Monica replied evenly. "I'm not aware of any reason for a stop. Could you please tell me?" The officer's lips tightened. "You were swerving slightly back there," he said, his voice sharp. "It's dangerous to not stay in your lane. Mind telling me what's going on?" Monica's heart sank a little. She had been driving carefully. She remembered staying completely in her lane, signaling appropriately. She didn't raise her voice, but her tone was firm. "I was paying attention the whole time, officer. I don't believe I swerved." "I always drive carefully." The officer's gaze shifted toward David. He noticed the man in the passenger seat, the city's police chief, but he didn't seem intimidated. In fact, he seemed almost annoyed by the presence of someone in authority. His demeanor became more aggressive, his tone sharper. "And who's this?" he asked, nodding toward David. "Doesn't matter, I deal with drivers all the same." David remained calm, even as his eyes narrowed slightly. "I'm the police chief of this city," he said, his voice steady but firm. "I expect all interactions to follow protocol and respect the law." The officer didn't react immediately. Instead, he turned back to Monica, scrutinizing her as if trying to intimidate her. "Well, ma'am," he said finally, "I need to make sure everything is in order. Let's just take a look at your registration and your insurance again." Monica felt a mix of frustration and fear. She had done nothing wrong, yet she felt trapped. Her husband's presence should have made the officer more cautious, but it didn't. She decided to stay calm, keeping her hands visible on the steering wheel. She reached for her documents slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements. As the officer inspected the papers, Monica noticed the tension in his posture. His jaw was tight, and his eyes flicked nervously between her and David. Monica realized that this wasn't just about a traffic stop, it was about power. The officer wanted to assert control, even if it meant bending the rules or making the encounter uncomfortable. David finally spoke again, his voice low but commanding. "Officer, please remember that citizens have rights. There's no reason for hostility. We just want to resolve this professionally." The officer paused, seeming slightly irritated by David's calm authority. "I'm just doing my job," he said, though there was a hint of defensiveness in his voice. Monica stayed quiet, listening to the exchange. She felt a surge of pride for her husband, but also a lingering anxiety. She didn't want the situation to escalate in a public area. She remembered stories she had heard about minor incidents spiraling out of control because tempers flared. She decided to focus on staying calm and composed, hoping that reason would prevail. As minutes passed, the officer finally handed back her documents. "All right," he said, his tone slightly less aggressive but still sharp. "Drive safely." Monica nodded politely, keeping her composure. "Thank you, officer," she said, her voice steady despite the tension in her chest. Once the officer returned to his car, Monica exhaled slowly. Her hands were still gripping the steering wheel tightly, and her heart was pounding. David placed a comforting hand on her arm. "You did great," he said quietly. "Just remember, staying calm was the best thing you could do." Monica nodded, trying to relax. She glanced at her husband, feeling a mixture of relief and gratitude. Despite the fear and tension, she had handled the situation with dignity. She realized that sometimes the right thing to do was not to argue or react, but to remain composed and let reason guide the outcome. As they continued driving home, the city lights reflected on the windshield, and Monica tried to push the memory of the encounter aside. She knew it would stay with her, though, a reminder of how quickly normal life could be interrupted by fear and intimidation, even when one had done nothing wrong. David broke the silence after a few minutes. "We'll make sure this incident is reviewed properly," he said. "No one should feel threatened by those meant to protect the public." Monica nodded, appreciating his support. She knew that tomorrow would bring challenges, but for now they were safe together and ready to face whatever came next. The rest of the drive was quiet, filled with the soft hum of the engine and the occasional streetlight passing by. Monica thought about her work, her community, and her family, and felt a renewed sense of purpose. She knew that standing up for oneself, even in small ways, was part of building a safer, fairer community. By the time they pulled into their driveway, the tension had eased, though the memory of the officer's stare lingered. Monica stepped out of the car, grateful for the calm evening and the support of her husband. She knew that while this was just one night, it was a story she and David would carry with them. A story about courage, composure, and standing up for what was right. The next morning, Monica woke up feeling the lingering tension from the previous night. Even though the traffic stop had ended without any citations or formal trouble, the memory of the officer's hostile stare and sharp words stayed with her. She sat at the kitchen table, sipping her coffee slowly, thinking about how quickly an ordinary evening could turn stressful. Her mind kept replaying the encounter, the officer's tone, the unnecessary scrutiny, and the way he had ignored her husband's presence entirely. David joined her at the table, a warm mug of coffee in hand. His expression was calm but serious. "I know last night wasn't easy," he said quietly. "I want you to know that what you experienced wasn't acceptable. No one should feel harassed, especially not by someone who is supposed to protect the public." Monica nodded, appreciating his words. She had always known David was dedicated to his job, but last night reminded her that even those who held positions of power couldn't always control the behavior of every officer in the field. "I know," she said softly, "but it still shook me. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just driving home, and suddenly it felt like I was being targeted." David reached across the table and gently held her hand. "We'll make sure this is looked into, but right now we need to focus on today. I don't want you to start the day feeling anxious. We'll take action, but we'll do it carefully and correctly." Monica took a deep breath, trying to shake off the unease. She reminded herself that she had acted calmly and professionally, keeping her composure even when the officer had been aggressive. She knew that holding her ground respectfully was the best way to handle situations like this. After breakfast, Monica and David got ready for the day. Monica had a meeting at the nonprofit office to finalize a community outreach program, and David had a series of briefings and administrative tasks to attend to. As they prepared to leave, David turned to her. "I'll drop you off," he said. "It's better if we stay together this morning, just in case." Monica hesitated for a moment, feeling a mix of relief and frustration. On one hand, she appreciated his support. On the other, she wished she didn't need extra protection just to drive safely. But she didn't argue. She knew it was better to stay safe and composed than to risk another tense encounter. The drive to her office was quiet. The streets were busier than the night before, with cars moving steadily and people hurrying to work. Monica tried to focus on the familiar scenery, the small shops, the tree-lined sidewalks, and the occasional passerby, but her mind kept returning to the previous night. She wondered why the officer had singled her out, why he had seemed so determined to intimidate her. David broke the silence, his voice calm and steady. "Monica, it's important to remember that this isn't your fault. You followed the rules, you stayed calm, that's what matters. Some people misuse authority, and that's their problem, not yours." Monica nodded slowly. "I know," she said, her voice quiet. "But it doesn't make it feel any better. The way he looked at me, it was like he was trying to make me small, like I didn't matter." David's expression softened. "I understand, but you do matter, Monica, you always have. And last night you handled yourself with grace. That's something to be proud of." By the time they reached her office, Monica felt a little steadier. She thanked David as he pulled into the parking lot. "I'll see you later," she said, "and thank you for being with me." David smiled warmly. "Always," he said. "Stay safe and remember I've got your back." Monica stepped out of the car, her briefcase in hand. She walked toward the office building, her mind still replaying last night's encounter. She knew she couldn't ignore it, but she also didn't want it to overshadow her day. As she entered the office, she was greeted by her coworkers, warm smiles and cheerful hellos. Their presence reminded her that her life wasn't defined by one tense moment. She had a community, a purpose, and people who respected her work. The morning passed quickly as Monica immersed herself in her tasks. She finalized schedules, coordinated with volunteers, and prepared documents for upcoming community events. Yet even amidst the busy work, the memory of the traffic stop lingered at the back of her mind. She found herself glancing at the window more often, almost as if expecting another officer to appear. During lunch, Monica received a message from David. It was short but reassuring. "I'm looking into the incident. We'll handle this carefully." She smiled, feeling a wave of relief. She knew David's position gave him the tools to address the situation professionally. She trusted him to handle it with care without creating unnecessary conflict. Later in the afternoon, as Monica was reviewing paperwork, she noticed a slight tension in the office. One of her colleagues leaned in and whispered, "Did you hear about that traffic stop last night?" Monica's stomach tightened. "Yes," she replied softly. Her colleague nodded sympathetically. "I can't believe someone would behave like that. You didn't deserve it." Monica appreciated the support. Even though she had handled the situation calmly, it was validating to hear others recognize that the behavior she had experienced was inappropriate. It reminded her that she wasn't alone, that others understood and cared. After work, Monica returned to the car where David was waiting. He greeted her with a small smile, but his eyes showed seriousness. "We need to talk about the next steps," he said. Monica nodded, bracing herself. She knew that addressing the incident formally was necessary, but she also knew it could be uncomfortable. They drove together to a nearby park where they could speak privately. David began, "First, we need to document everything that happened. Your account, my account, any witnesses, and any evidence like your phone recording." Monica had already saved the recording from her phone, a small but important step in protecting herself. She handed the phone to David. "I recorded part of the interaction," she said. "It's nothing fancy, but it captures most of what happened." David reviewed the recording carefully. The officer's aggressive tone and dismissive behavior were clear. "This will be important," he said. "It shows exactly how he behaved and supports your account." They spent the next hour going over the details. Monica recounted everything. The way the officer approached the car, his unnecessary aggression, his dismissive attitude toward David, and how she had remained calm throughout. David asked clarifying questions gently, making sure the report was accurate and detailed. By the time they finished, Monica felt a mixture of exhaustion and relief. The act of recounting the incident, documenting it carefully, and having David's support made her feel empowered. She realized that taking action, rather than simply trying to forget the encounter, was the right thing to do. As they left the park, David spoke again. "We'll submit a formal complaint. It's important that the department addresses this properly, but we'll do it carefully." "We want accountability, not unnecessary drama," Monica nodded. "I agree. I just want this handled professionally. I don't want anyone to feel unsafe or harassed again." The drive home was quieter than usual. Both Monica and David were lost in thought, considering the steps ahead. They knew that filing a complaint could lead to scrutiny, but it was necessary. They understood that standing up for oneself was part of maintaining integrity, both personally and professionally. That evening, Monica reflected on the day. Despite the lingering anxiety from the traffic stop, she felt stronger. She had faced an uncomfortable and unjust situation and had acted with composure. She had support from her husband, a police chief who believed in ethical behavior, and from her community. She realized that courage wasn't always about dramatic actions. Sometimes, it was about remaining calm under pressure, documenting the truth, and taking measured steps to ensure fairness and accountability. She knew that this incident would become part of her story, a reminder of the challenges people faced when confronting misuse of authority. Before going to bed, Monica sent a message to a close friend, recounting the events of the day. Her friend responded with encouragement and support, reinforcing her sense that she was not alone. Monica felt a sense of connection and reassurance that helped her finally relax. As she drifted off to sleep, Monica thought about the future. She knew the next steps would require patience and persistence, but she felt ready. She had faced an uncomfortable situation head-on, maintained her dignity, and prepared herself to ensure accountability. Even in the quiet of her bedroom, she could still feel the tension from the previous night, but it no longer overwhelmed her. Instead, it became a reminder of her resilience, her ability to stay composed, and the importance of standing up for herself and others. She knew that, together with David, they would navigate the challenges ahead, and that justice, fairness, and integrity would guide their actions. The next morning, Monica woke up to the sound of her alarm, her mind already turning to the events of the previous night. The traffic stop and the harassment she had experienced weighed heavily on her, even as she tried to focus on her work and daily routine. David had gone to the office early for a series of briefings, leaving her a quiet house to gather her thoughts. Monica made herself breakfast, moving slowly as she reflected on what had happened. She realized that the encounter was more than just a routine traffic stop. It was a demonstration of power misused. The officer had singled her out, ignored her husband's position, and tried to intimidate her. She shivered slightly at the memory, but this time, instead of fear, she felt determination. By mid-morning, Monica had collected all the evidence she could. She reviewed the video recording she had taken during the stop, making notes of every detail: the officer's tone, his words, the gestures he made. She also wrote down her account of the incident, making sure it was detailed and precise. Monica knew that the stronger her documentation, the harder it would be for the department to ignore the situation. David returned home just after breakfast, his expression serious but calm. He had spent the morning reviewing protocols and gathering information from internal sources. "Monica," he said as he entered the kitchen, "I've spoken with a few colleagues, and we know the proper procedure to file a formal complaint. We're going to do this carefully. We want accountability, but we need to be methodical." Monica nodded, handing him her notes and the video recording. "Everything I have is here. I tried to document it as clearly as possible," she said. David took the materials and studied them. "This is very thorough," he said. "It shows the officer's behavior clearly. The facts are on our side, and that's important. We need to present this professionally, not emotionally. The goal is change, not confrontation." After reviewing the evidence, they spent the next hour organizing the report. Monica typed out a detailed account of the incident, including the time, location, and sequence of events. She described her feelings at each moment, explaining how the officer's actions had made her feel unsafe and targeted. David added his observations, noting the officer's disregard for protocol and the tension caused by his behavior. By the time they finished, the report was ready. Monica felt a mix of relief and nervousness. Submitting a complaint against a law enforcement officer, even with strong evidence, was not an easy decision. There could be backlash or scrutiny, but she knew it was necessary. David reassured her, emphasizing that the goal was justice and accountability, not personal retaliation. Later that afternoon, Monica and David drove to the police department to submit the complaint. The building was familiar to both of them, yet this visit felt different. As they walked through the doors, Monica could feel the tension in the air. Officers moved about, busy with their own tasks, unaware of the storm that was about to arrive. They approached the front desk, and David explained the purpose of their visit. "We are submitting a formal complaint regarding an incident that occurred last night," he said calmly but firmly. "We expect the department to review this professionally and take appropriate action." The officer at the desk nodded, taking the materials from David. "We'll forward this to Internal Affairs," he said. "Thank you for your report." Monica felt a small sense of relief. The formal process had begun, and now it was out of their hands. They had presented the facts clearly, backed by evidence, and requested accountability. That was all they could do for now. As they left the building, Monica felt the weight of the past few days lift slightly, but the experience had left a mark. She realized that confronting misuse of authority required courage, patience, and a clear strategy. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary to create a safer and fairer community. Over the next few days, Monica continued her work, focusing on her projects and community programs. Yet she couldn't fully shake the memory of the officer's harassment. Every time she saw a police car on the street, a small tension would rise in her chest. She reminded herself to stay calm, knowing that fear would not help her or the people she served. David, too, was busy at the department, but he made time each evening to discuss updates with Monica. They reviewed any responses from Internal Affairs, discussed strategy, and considered next steps. David's support was unwavering, and Monica found strength in knowing he was working to ensure the situation was addressed properly. One evening, as they sat together in their living room, Monica spoke her mind. "David, I just can't understand why he acted that way. I didn't do anything wrong. I was calm, respectful, and careful, and yet he treated me like I was guilty of something." David listened attentively, his hand resting on hers. "I know, Monica, that's the difficult part. Sometimes people misuse authority because they can. But we've documented everything and we've followed the proper steps. That gives us strength. We're not reacting blindly, we're acting wisely." Monica nodded, feeling a mix of frustration and determination. She realized that while she couldn't change the officer's behavior alone, she could ensure that it was formally reviewed and addressed. Her experience could help prevent similar situations for others in the future. A few days later, Internal Affairs contacted David to acknowledge receipt of the complaint. They confirmed that an investigation had begun and that the officer in question would be reviewed carefully. Monica felt a wave of relief, knowing that the process was moving forward. During this period, Monica and David also discussed the broader implications of the incident. They talked about the importance of community trust in law enforcement and how misconduct could erode that trust. Monica realized that her experience, though difficult, could become a catalyst for positive change if handled correctly. One evening, Monica received a call from a local journalist who had heard about the incident through community channels. The journalist wanted to discuss the experience and explore the topic of accountability in law enforcement. Monica hesitated at first, unsure if she wanted public attention. But after discussing it with David, she decided that sharing her story could help raise awareness and encourage better practices. The interview was conducted professionally, with Monica explaining the facts clearly and calmly. She emphasized the importance of ethical policing, the need for accountability, and the impact of harassment on individuals and communities. Her message was clear. Standing up for oneself, documenting incidents, and using proper channels were essential to creating a safer society. The article was published a few days later, and Monica was surprised by the positive response. Community members expressed support and shared similar experiences, creating a dialogue about respectful policing and accountability. Monica felt a renewed sense of purpose. realizing that her experience, though challenging, had opened a conversation that could lead to change. Meanwhile, the internal affairs investigation progressed. Officers interviewed witnesses, reviewed reports, and examined the video Monica had recorded. The process was thorough and professional, ensuring that the officer's behavior was assessed fairly and objectively. Monica and David followed the updates closely, appreciating the diligence and attention to detail. Through it all, Monica remained focused on her work and her community programs. She continued to support neighborhood initiatives, mentor young people, and advocate for safer streets. Her experience with harassment had strengthened her resolve, reminding her why her work mattered. She wanted to ensure that everyone, regardless of background, felt safe and respected in their interactions with law enforcement. David, too, continued his work at the department, balancing his responsibilities as police chief with supporting Monica and addressing systemic issues within the force. He knew that accountability and ethical behavior were not just ideals, they were essential to building trust between the police and the community. As the weeks passed, Monica noticed a subtle change. She felt more confident in handling difficult situations and more empowered to advocate for herself and others. The traffic stop, which had initially been a source of fear and frustration, had become a learning experience. She had faced the situation with dignity, documented it thoroughly, and taken measured steps to ensure accountability. One evening, as they sat together after a long day, Monica reflected on the journey so far. "David, this experience has been hard, but I've learned so much. I know now that courage isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, careful, and steady." David smiled, his eyes warm. "Exactly, Monica. Courage is staying calm under pressure, speaking the truth, and taking action in a thoughtful way. You've shown that every step of the way." Monica felt a wave of gratitude. She knew that the path ahead might still hold challenges, but she felt ready. She had learned the importance of resilience, the value of documentation, and the strength of having someone supportive by her side. Together, she and David were ready to navigate whatever came next, ensuring that fairness, integrity, and accountability guided their actions. By the end of part III, Monica's story had transformed from one of fear and frustration into a narrative of empowerment and resilience. She had faced harassment, documented the facts, and begun the process of seeking accountability. With David's support and the community's recognition, she felt prepared to continue advocating for justice and ethical behavior, both in her own life and in the broader community. The following weeks were a time of tension and anticipation for Monica and David. Though the initial harassment incident had passed, the process of seeking accountability was just beginning. Monica spent her days focused on her work at the nonprofit, coordinating programs for the community, mentoring young volunteers, and managing schedules. She threw herself into her tasks, finding comfort in the familiar routines that reminded her of her purpose. David, on the other hand, navigated the complexities of his role as police chief. Between meetings, briefings, and administrative duties, he also monitored the internal affairs investigation closely. He wanted to ensure that the officer in question was treated fairly, but that the incident was addressed thoroughly and transparently. The balance between justice and fairness was delicate, but he remained committed to maintaining the integrity of the department. Monica often reflected on how much the incident had changed her perspective. At first, she had felt fear and frustration, overwhelmed by the thought that someone in a position of authority could misuse power so casually. But as the days passed, she felt stronger and more capable. She realized that courage wasn't about confrontation alone. It was about taking measured, thoughtful action, standing up for oneself, and documenting the truth. One afternoon, Monica received a call from the Internal Affairs Office. A friendly voice on the other end explained that the investigation was progressing. "We have reviewed the report, your statements, and the video evidence you provided," the officer said. "We are taking this matter seriously." The officer involved will be interviewed, and a full review of his conduct is underway. Monica felt a wave of relief. Hearing that the process was being handled professionally reassured her. She knew that the path to accountability could be long and sometimes frustrating, but she also understood that careful and thorough investigation was necessary to achieve a meaningful outcome. After hanging up, Monica shared the news with David, who nodded approvingly. "That's good progress," he said. "It shows that the department is committed to doing this the right way. It might take time, but proper review is more important than rushing." Over the next several days, Monica noticed small but meaningful changes in the community's response. People she had worked with and mentored reached out to express support. Some shared their own experiences with harassment or bias, while others thanked her for speaking up. Monica was touched by the messages and calls, realizing that her courage had encouraged others to speak out and advocate for themselves. One evening, Monica and David attended a community meeting together. Residents gathered to discuss neighborhood safety, community policing, and ways to build trust with law enforcement. Monica spoke briefly about the importance of accountability, sharing her perspective without focusing on the personal details of the incident. She emphasized that ethical behavior, transparency, and communication were essential for fostering a safe and respectful environment. David supported her, highlighting how the police department valued fairness and integrity. He assured residents that complaints would be taken seriously and that officers were expected to uphold the highest standards. The meeting ended with applause and a sense of shared purpose, reinforcing Monica's belief that positive change was possible when people worked together. Meanwhile, the internal affairs investigation continued. Officers interviewed the harassing officer, reviewed past conduct records, and analyzed the video evidence. The review was meticulous, leaving no detail overlooked. Monica and David waited patiently for updates, knowing that the process required diligence to ensure fairness for all parties involved. Finally, after several weeks, Monica received a formal notice from the police department. The officer had been found to have acted unprofessionally and in violation of departmental standards. As a result, he faced disciplinary action, including retraining, supervision, and a formal warning added to his record. The decision was not publicized widely, but it sent a clear message within the department that misconduct would not be ignored. Monica felt a mix of emotions: relief, satisfaction, and a sense of justice. While the incident had been stressful and upsetting, the outcome validated the steps she had taken. She realized that standing up for herself, documenting the facts, and following the proper channels had made a difference. It was a reminder that accountability was achievable, even in difficult circumstances. David and Monica discussed the outcome together. "It's not just about punishment," David said. "It's about setting a standard." Officers need to understand that their behavior has consequences and that the community deserves respect and fairness. Monica nodded. "Exactly, and I hope it also shows others in the community that speaking up is important. Silence doesn't solve anything. Standing up carefully and thoughtfully can lead to change." The weeks following the resolution were filled with reflection and growth. Monica felt empowered, not only because the incident had been addressed, but also because she had learned valuable lessons about resilience, patience, and advocacy. She continued her work in the community with renewed purpose, mentoring young volunteers, organizing programs, and encouraging dialogue about respect, fairness, and accountability. David, too, reflected on the experience. As police chief, he understood that leadership meant more than managing operations. It meant ensuring ethical behavior, fostering community trust, and supporting those affected by misconduct. He appreciated Monica's courage and recognized how their combined efforts had strengthened both the department and the community. One evening, Monica and David sat together on their porch, the city lights twinkling in the distance. The air was calm, and a gentle breeze carried the faint sounds of evening traffic. Monica took a deep breath, feeling a sense of closure. "You know," she said quietly, "I think this experience has made me stronger. It was hard, but I learned so much about myself and about how to stand up for what's right." David smiled, taking her hand. "I'm proud of you, Monica. You handled everything with grace and strength. And together, we've shown that fairness and integrity can prevail, even in difficult situations." Monica leaned back, looking out over the city. She reflected on the journey, from the tense traffic stop to the investigation, the community response, and finally, the resolution. Each step had been challenging, but it had also been transformative. She realized that courage wasn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it was quiet, steady, and thoughtful. Over the next few weeks, Monica noticed the positive impact of their actions. Community members spoke more openly about accountability, neighbors felt more confident engaging with law enforcement, and a renewed sense of trust began to grow. Monica's story, while personal, had become part of a larger conversation about respect, fairness, and ethical behavior. At work, Monica continued to mentor young volunteers, sharing her experiences and encouraging them to act with integrity. She emphasized the importance of documenting incidents, speaking up responsibly, and trusting in proper procedures. Her story became an example of how individuals could navigate difficult situations and advocate for change, even when faced with fear or intimidation. David also used the experience as a learning opportunity within the department. He held meetings with officers, discussing ethical behavior, proper protocol, and the importance of community trust. He emphasized that accountability wasn't about punishment alone. It was about creating a culture where respect, professionalism, and fairness were expected at all times. Together, Monica and David continued to support each other, drawing strength from their partnership. They knew that challenges would arise in the future, but they felt prepared to face them with composure, courage, and thoughtful action. Their shared experience had strengthened their bond and reinforced their commitment to justice and integrity. One evening, as they relaxed at home, Monica reflected on how far they had come. The memory of the traffic stop still lingered, but it no longer caused fear or anxiety. Instead, it served as a reminder of resilience, courage, and the importance of standing up for what was right. David noticed her thoughtful expression. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. Monica smiled softly. "Just how much we've learned about courage, about patience, and about how to make a difference. It wasn't easy, but I think we both grew from it." David nodded. "Absolutely. And I think our community is stronger too because of it. Accountability and fairness matter, and now people can see that actions have consequences and that speaking up can lead to change." Monica felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The journey had been challenging, but it had also been transformative. She had faced harassment, remained composed, documented the truth, and contributed to accountability and positive change. The experience had tested her, but it had also strengthened her confidence, resilience, and sense of purpose. In the months that followed, Monica continued her work with the community, inspired by the lessons she had learned. She organized workshops on communication, trust building, and ethical behavior. She mentored young people, helping them develop confidence, integrity, and awareness. Her story became a quiet but powerful example of how careful, thoughtful action could lead to meaningful change. David continued to lead the police department with integrity and dedication. He implemented additional training, emphasized accountability, and worked to strengthen community relationships. He recognized that leadership wasn't just about authority. It was about supporting fairness, guiding ethical behavior, and ensuring that those affected by misconduct received justice. Through their combined efforts, Monica and David demonstrated that courage, patience, and thoughtful action could transform a challenging situation into an opportunity for growth, awareness, and positive change. The incident, once a source of fear and frustration, had become a catalyst for empowerment, accountability, and resilience. As they sat together one quiet evening, watching the city lights flicker in the distance, Monica felt a profound sense of closure. She knew that life would continue to present challenges, but she also knew that she was capable of facing them with courage, composure, and integrity. Together with David, she had navigated a difficult path, and the experience had strengthened not only their bond, but also their commitment to justice and ethical behavior. The story of that evening, the traffic stop, the harassment, the investigation, and the resolution, would remain with Monica and David, not as a source of fear, but as a testament to the power of resilience, careful action, and standing up for what is right. It was a story of accountability, empowerment, and hope, a story that reminded them and the community around them that fairness and integrity can prevail, even in the most challenging circumstances.